Welcome back, everybody. We're officially in verdict watch in our Michigan trial of Kemia Hassel. The question, of course, is did this woman plot the shooting death of her husband, Sergeant Tyrone Hassel III, with a man that she was allegedly having an affair with, a man named Jeremy Cuellar? That's the question that the jury will have to consider right now. Cuellar's facing his own trial later in August. Now, the jury did come back with some requests. They want some information as they continue the deliberations, and they wanted some more information about the communications between Kemia and Jeremy through Snapchat. Again, it's alleged that they plotted this murder through Snapchat. So the judge is going to provide them with a Snapchat log of their communications as best as they can. That will not include phone calls through the Snapchat app because those don't appear on the logs, and you won't have a record of that. The other request is when detectives made a request through Snapchat to get some more information from them. The jury actually wants that response from Snapchat, so they're going to get that as well. Clearly, this is going to help them decide one way or another her involvement in the death of her late husband. We'll obviously let you know if we hear another question, or if we get a verdict, we'll make sure to let you know. Again, the Rosenbaum trial is currently on break, but this does give us a good opportunity to talk more about the Hassel case. So let's go right now to what we heard from Detective Sergeant Corey Peak. He's a computer forensic examiner and can talk more about this level of evidence because if one hand of looking at it, it's pretty incriminating against Kemia. Take a look. So Terri, maybe she just wanted to delete her Snapchat account. Maybe she was sick and tired of the account. Maybe she didn't want to get any more on social media. Maybe she felt it was too distracting. Or was she trying to cover up a plot to kill her husband?
Or maybe she was trying to cover up the plot to kill her husband. It's just too coincidental, the fact that the murder occurred and her Snapchat account was deleted. So I don't think it's a coincidence here.
But, I mean, how much can a jury just say, okay, well, the prosecution couldn't definitively say why she deleted it. They couldn't definitively say why she Googled how to delete my Snapchat account, how, looking up the active shooter, the inactive shooting. Maybe the two things aren't connected.
I think the jury is going to connect those dots, and I think the prosecution is doing a good job showing that one search is related to the other search, that looking up what happened with the shooting and then looking up how to delete the Snapchat.
Well, clearly they have some questions about that Snapchat account. That's one of the things that they've requested. But what we also want to go back to is a really important moment when the defendant herself was in that police interrogation room and said some things that are biting her now in trial. Okay, everybody, we have a development for you in the very trial that we've been covering, the Kemia Hassel trial. The jury has reached a verdict. We do not know what that verdict is yet. This is a live feed into the courtroom right now. Want to get your perspective. Terri, we're waiting to hear what this is. They've been deliberating for a short time. They asked to get the Snapchat messages. We watched just now her confession tape, her alleged confession tape. What do you think they're going to come back with?
I think the jury is going to come back with a guilty verdict. It happened so fast, they didn't take much time to deliberate. So that's not a good sign for the defense.
But why did they want that last Snapchat conversation? Why did they want the response from Snapchat to the detective's request for information? What do you think was the last thing they wanted to look at here?
I think they wanted to know whether or not this was planned, this was a conspiracy, and so that Snapchat, the fact that she was trying to delete it, I think that shows that she was culpable.
And you need a unanimous jury verdict here. So the one thing that we can say right now is the jury, this is not a hung jury. This is not a jury who can't come to a decision. Usually you see that after hours and hours of deliberation. One way or another, they have a decision right now. The idea that that confession tape was coerced, that she was pressured by police to give these answers. Your thoughts on that?
Well, the judge has already ruled, obviously, that it was admissible, and the jury has seen it. And I think the jury saw that there was no coercion going on. She was speaking voluntarily, and she actually was signing the questions that were being asked. So they made up their own mind that this was legitimate.
I'd say at one point, you can always question a police interrogation tape, but the fact that they have a jailhouse recording of her with her mother where she discusses this as well seemed to go over the edge as well.
Jesse, to me, that conversation with her mother is the end-all, be-all. That would convince me that she did it. She's admitting it to her own mom.
Yeah, some of the things she said is to her mother, I knew what was going on. I knew what was happening. It was planned in Korea. Why, her mother asked. He made me plan it so that we could be together. Now, the fact that she puts the impetus on him, that it was his plan, he's the shooter, can that help the defense at all?
I don't think so. She went along with it. She didn't say no, don't do it, and so she's guilty as well.
Okay, I think we can jump live right now. Here's the verdict. There you have it. The jury found Kemia Hassel guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and conspiracy to commit murder. These carry with it mandatory life in prison without the possibility of parole. We're going to hear what the update is on sentencing in a minute. Terri, your reaction?
I think it's the right verdict, and I think the jury listened to the evidence, and I can only say the defendant is lucky that she lives in Michigan because it does not have a death sentence.
How is this going to affect the trial of the alleged shooter, her alleged lover, the person that she apparently had an affair with, Jeremy Cuellar? How will this affect it? Will the prosecutors work to try to make a deal with her in order to testify against Cuellar? What do you think?
I think they could do that, but they could also try him separately, and they have plenty of evidence to introduce, and I'm sure they'll get him as the shooter.
I mean, they don't, so you're saying they don't need her to prove their case. I mean, who would be more important here, the person who plots or the person who actually commits the shooting?
I think it would be easiest to get a conviction against the shooter himself because there's so much forensic evidence showing that he was the trigger. So they don't really need her. I mean, if they want to avoid having a trial, they could use her, but I think it would be, simple for them to get him as well.
Now we move on to the sentencing situation. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. We've just gotten word that sentencing for her will be on August 30th. So the idea here, again, any chance that she wouldn't get the mandatory, I mean, it's mandatory. What could the defense present here as some sort of statement to the court?
Yeah, not much. I mean, I suppose they could try to present some factors that would lessen the sentence, but it's a mandatory sentence, as you say, unless there's something that went wrong in the trial and the judge didn't include all of the evidence that he should have. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward.
Now, this jury, the judge said that they'll have an opportunity to speak about this case. Obviously, we would love to hear from them about their perspective about how it was to sit on this jury and how they came to the decision. The fact that they reached it so quickly, rather quickly, does that tell you that they've already came up with their mind, they already made up their minds before they went in? Does that tell you, and you never want this, were they communicating with each other about the case beforehand? Very quick verdict here.
As you know, under the law, they're supposed to wait until all of the evidence gets in, and they're not supposed to deliberate until it's time to deliberate. But I think the evidence was so strong that there wasn't much to discuss, and they came to a quick conclusion.
What happens to Hassel now? So after she's taken out of court, what happens? What's next steps for her?
Well, she'll probably still be behind bars until the sentencing. I think that the judge is not going to let her out at this point, clearly.
Will she be transferred to a different facility, probably a prison of some sort? Yeah.
Exactly, because she's going to start serving her time. They could say that, this is time served, although she's going to be in for life.
And now what does a defense attorney do in this position? It's a loss. It's a loss for her defense. So what do they do now moving forward?
They're going to appeal. I mean, that's going to be automatic. If the judge let something in that the judge should not have let in or, excluded evidence that should have gotten in. So I think that that's all that they're going to be able to do.
That was a live feed of her actually being exited from the courtroom. She didn't appear to be shocked. It's hard to determine what a defendant is thinking when that verdict comes down. We've seen emotional verdicts before, but did she appear to be shocked by this?
She did not. And one thing I'll tell you about her demeanor throughout the trial, she had tissues and she was dabbing her eye, but there was no water. There was no emotion. So I think she sort of expected this at the end of the day.
You also have to imagine the victim himself is such a sympathetic figure. Here's somebody who served our country. By all accounts, the night that he was gunned down, he was bringing food to her and their child, and she's having an affair.
And he called her his queen. So, he's a sergeant. To your point, he served his country. He's working hard. And out of nowhere, he's ambushed. It was a horrible death.
Horrible death. But what's interesting about this case and the ones that we've covered here on Law&Crime, The power of social media, connecting people with Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook, it changes the way courtrooms work. I mean, Snapchat, you could argue, really sealed the deal here for her.
That's exactly right. And the interesting thing is the jury asked about those logs, and so Snapchat was part of this trial.
Bottom line, got to be careful what you put in writing and let alone social media. I mean, why would they be communicating through Snapchat like that?
You know, not too smart. I mean, actually, when you think about the whole crime, how do you just shoot someone in cold blood?
That's the case, and clearly when you try to cover up, doesn't work so well. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, clearly a lot to talk about. Stay tuned.